Welcome, everyone. See a few familiar names and some new ones. So great to see all of you here today. We will go ahead and officially get started shortly, but in the meantime, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Please share your name, where you're tuning in from. If you happen to be grazing any animals, we'd love to hear what you're grazing. And also just any questions that you came to this presentation with. So thanks for joining us today. Feel free to turn your cameras on if you'd like, or munch on your lunch. My name's Alanna Koshollek, and I work with Renewing the Countryside and WiWiC. And we are so pleased today to have all of you here, as well as our speakers, Rachel Bouressa and Carrie Stevens. They are going to share a ton of experience and stories regarding grazing and the value of having a grazing plan and what you can learn and how that can guide the practices that you implement on your land. So welcome. I see more people joining us. If you're just tuning in, we're going to go ahead and get started soon. Please introduce yourself in the chat by including your name, where you're tuning in from, and if you happen to be grazing any animals or if there are any questions you came to this presentation with. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. Please, of course, feel free to eat your lunch during this presentation. We're going to keep everybody muted until we move into kind of Q&A at the end, just to make sure that we can hear everybody. I'd really encourage you to use the chat function today, both to introduce yourself and also to ask any questions that you have of our speakers or of each other. And you can recognize any of the chat comments made by our facilitator, Christine, today, because those will be noted with an emoji before the statement. Feel free to connect with her one-on-one if you're having any technical issues. You can select Christine and send her a direct message if you need help with any of the tech issues or just want to remain anonymous today. As a reminder, as you use the chat and interact on any of our media streams from social media or our listserv, remember that we all bring different experiences and perspectives, and we're here to learn with one another. So please put the relationships first and practice trust and respect, and understand that there's multiple truths and norms that we may be sharing and discussing today. So also, please feel free to share any resources that you know of as you come up, and leave any questions that you have in the chat. And with that, I will be turning it over to Esther, Program Director for WiWiC, to tell us a little bit about the WiWiC program before we hear from our speakers today. Thanks again for being with us.
Thank you, Alanna. As I start the PowerPoint for sharing, I would like to welcome each and every one of you for being here today. Especially, I want to take this time to thank our resource persons, Rachel and Carrie, for taking this time here. Rachel has been a WiWiC coach and has been an ardent supporter of WiWiC right through from when we started. So thank you so much, Rachel, for doing that for us. Just to give you a preamble of when WiWiC started, we started out in 2020 as a gathering and learning space for women interested in conservation, thanks to the USDA NRCS funding that we had. We have now grown to be a network of about 5,000 women plugged into this program, and just wanted to make you aware of an opportunity to gather coming up tomorrow at Mounds View Prairie for a time of togetherness, and women will be collecting prairie seeds as a part of this event tomorrow. You can see all the event listings and registrations of on the WiWiC website for the year. And then August was a busy month for us in terms of events. There were a lot of events across the state. This picture you see shows the diversity of the work that we do. on your left, you'll see an event that was in a urban ag community garden space, while on the right, you see an event on Joey's farm, prairie habitat that she had established on a rural farm. So we work across with women in different places in the state. And it is all possible because of women like you who lead and open your farm or garden and also bring people together. So we are very thankful, especially in this time of when we don't have funding. It's only been the women who have stepped up and helped us keep going. A quick a note on other events that's coming up. So we have events listed for September on our website. There's like an event in Amherst Junction, Walk and Talk in the Woods, Learn to Become a Bat Landlord. Christine Klessig, who's the host, has a wonderful forest area that she has where she's trying to bring a bat habitat. If you want to learn more on that, please join us on September 12th. The next one that's coming up is our lunch webinar, the summer webinar coming up on agroforestry and perennial crops. We have two speakers, Nicole from Michael Fields Ag Institute, and we also have someone from Savannah Institute as the resource person. So if you want to go perennial and you want to know how to work on it, please join us on September 18th. Following that is our Prairie Walk and Talk in Jackson County with our very own Alanna Koshollek on her farm. It's going to be a great experience. We invite you all to join that. There's one more event that's not been listed that's coming up on September 26th in Humble Pie Farm. That's Jennifer Nelson's farm. More of greenhouse and conservation along those lines. So please go to our website, look at these events, and join us wherever you can to be a part of this great world. I also want to take this time to invite you all to join the listserv, where women are chatting a lot about things that are dear to their heart and how to go about it. And last week was an interesting conversation on AI and how women are going to use AI in the coming days. So please, if you want to join us join the listserv, please send us an email at info@wiwic.org. We'll pull out and then put your names together on the listserv. These events that I talked about are coming for free because Michael Fields Ag Institute is committed to do the work. You know, our funding terminated in April, but we're still able to continue to go because a lot of money Michael Fields is trying to support us through our difficult situation, though. So if the partnering organization in this is in the efforts that we do here, Renewing the Countryside through Alanna, who works with the team. And off late, we've had some conversations with Women, Food, and Ag Network to see how WeFin can also be supporting our work that we do in Wisconsin. So just wanted to put that out there. And I just wanted to ask you if you could support us. Please consider a one-time or a recurring donation of any amount. We are running a campaign this year, Give 25 in 2025. So even if you're able to give only $25 for this year, would be grateful to accept any donations. So I wanted to put that out there as well. Yeah, you're the best. So thank you so much for being here. And I will hand this back to Alanna. Thanks, Alanna.
Yeah, thank you, Esther. And I'd encourage you, Christine put in the chat the contact information if you we'd love to hear from you what you're looking for from WiWiC in 2026. And also if you might be interested in hosting an event on your place, please, you can follow up with that contact information and we'd love to hear from you. And now I would like to take the opportunity to introduce Rachel Bouressa. Rachel is a fifth-generation farmer in Waupaca County and a second-generation grazer. Her parents were some early adopters, and she attended her first GrassWorks Grazing Conference as a kid. She then went to UW-Madison and received degrees in Agronomy and Soils and worked in Agroecology Masters program. In 2014, after a barn fire, Rachel left the university and returned to the farm. She currently practices management-intensive rotational grazing with her herd of about 90 head of British White Park cattle. on about 120 acres of her family's land. She regularly engages with the community and hosts farm tours, as well as campers through HipCamp and many other events. I'd encourage you to check out her Facebook page. She also works part-time as a project coordinator for the G Team, an educational network for agency and other professionals working to improve and advance grazing in Wisconsin. She is also the at-large director of the state Wisconsin Farmers Union Board, a mentor farmer and conservation plan writer with Wisconsin Women in Conservation, and a member of the local Farmers Union and Farm Bureau chapters, an FFA alumni member and supporter. She also participates and engages with numerous other working groups regarding water quality, regenerative and sustainable agriculture, and serves as the agricultural representative on the state's Natural Resources Board. Bouressa Farms became a participating farmer in the Upper Fox Wolf Demonstration Farm Network just this year as well. Rachel's new farm motto is that I want to demonstrate and promote how we can have productive agriculture while also prioritizing and protecting our natural resources in tandem and with respect. And we're so happy to have you here today, Rachel. Thank you for joining us, and you're in for a real treat. Rachel has so much knowledge and experience to share, and feel free to put questions that you have in the chat. We'll come back to those after we hear from both Rachel and Carrie today.
Hi, well, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for having such a lengthy bio for you to read. My joke is that I need to get one of those Girl Scout sashes so I can put all of the, the logos and the groups that I work with, because I always seem to forget someone. But thank you very much. And yeah, talking about grazing and cows and specifically grazing plan writing is one of my favorite things to do. I'm going to kind of be running through, kind of the basics of a grazing plan, kind of the how, what, and why, the who, the resources, but feel free to ask questions, and definitely want this to be a really engaging hour for everyone. So do you want to pull up slides? Are they up, or do I not see them?
I think Alanna's working on it. And Alanna, you're muted just in case. We're trying to share with the group.
Well, I can start too. Well, one of the things I made a note of too is whenever I hand off a grazing plan to a new farmer, I tell them the only thing you can plan on is things not going according to plan. That's with grazing plans, that's with farming, that's with life, that's with Zoom meetings. But for perspective on kind of writing plans and working with NRCS and working with new farmers, I'm on my fourth, I think, equip contract. I wrote grazing plans with Golden Sands RC&D as well as a TSP. Then I also participated in training new NRCS and agency staff on writing grazing plans through the Grassland 2.0 project last year. So I feel like kind of all those different perspectives and experiences kind of helped shape me. And that's why maybe they asked me so nicely to be here with you guys today. Do I have, okay. So then, yeah, we can go here. So if you are interested in getting started with grazing, this was kind of my cookbook how-to. I work a lot with NRCS. There's some really great, passionate people. That's where most of the people that I write plans for contact me through NRCS. So definitely get into your local NRCS office. EQUIP is the program that covers grazing. They'll have an idea of kind of where they're at with kind of funding and their capacity. Some NRCS offices are able to write the plans in-house. Otherwise, they can put you in contact with either the RC&Ds in the area or there's a list of TSPs, which is like what I am now, that are basically subcontractors that can write plans. The nice thing with working with kind of the TSPs and the RC&Ds is, you know, they've got a lot of experience. Some of the NRCS staff is newer to it. So anytime you work with someone that's kind of seen a lot of plans and done it a lot of different ways, there's some benefit in that. But in doing those trainings, I also thought it was really neat to be able to see how other people would lay out the same operation. So also want to kind of keep people thinking about how they would set it up. And I guess that's my later advice. So yeah, contact your NRCS. They'll be able to connect you, give you a list of people to connect with. That person would then come out to your farm and then go through that list of the farm visit, you know, what your goals are, what your experience level is, you know, how much time that you have to put towards this, if you work off farm, kind of all of those components to being able to make a plan. And I always say, you know, the plan writer's goal is to make that layout and make the plan so easy to use that, you know, the person, that success is the easiest option. And quality management is made easy through those, whether it's lanes or, you know, how you're setting up that fencing. Do we want to answer questions as we go? I saw it pop up.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll
Up to you,
save-
Rachel. Oh,
Yeah, I think we'll save them. Let's save them
For
for
the
that.
ed-
Make sure we can
Okay.
hear both from you and Carrie, and then we'll come back to them.
Sure. And I'll kind of go through this fairly fast, I guess. But so yeah, those are some of the components of the site visit. And then the plan would get developed where you would set up, you know, kind of that plan writer would then set up kind of some draft maps and work together with the landowner. You know, there's usually a series of emails back and forth of what you think. Does this look good? Eventually, if we were working with NRCS, you would get a final approval for both the landowner and NRCS. And then there's the implementation and follow-up visits. Okay, go to the next slide. The next kind of slides are what goes into a grazing plan. And I took these kind of from our template. So goals, narrative, your existing and planned livestock, that stocking rate and forage animal balance, forage species inventory, seasonal management, planned pasture improvements, contingency plans, weed management, on-site equipment, and then critical and sensitive areas. So kind of making sure that you check all those boxes when you're working with someone, again, to set them up for success and make sure, you know, and each of these things kind of prompts that conversation between the plan writer and then that producer, things to consider. And then this is taken from one of my plans, that addendum. So within that plan, and Carrie, I can, when we bring her on, kind of talk to what it is, but there ends up being a wealth of information in there. A few of the things I'll kind of dive into a little bit more that I think are really important with planning, but then we can kind of get into more questions. So this is kind of, you know, what you would, if you were having a grazing plan done, would include. And then I just wanted to share kind of a few of the really important planning tools. So if you wanted to, if you weren't going forward with getting a full grazing plan and working with NRCS, and you just wanted to start diving into this on the farm on your own operation, I'm not sure if you guys have kind of gone through web soil survey in other webinars, but that's one of the first places that I'll go when I'm, you know, doing a plan for someone or have a new, before I even go to the site visit, I will pull up this information on web soil survey. So this is, you know, if you put Google web soil survey, this is the page that you'll come to. Then you can go to the next slide. And I guess maybe I should ask, maybe everyone's used this, but It's a really interesting tool. So then once you click that green button, you'll go to define your area of interest, where you can put in your address. And then I guess I can't, there's on the little toolbar, there's a red rectangle with the AOI, and that's what you can use to select your farm. And then once you've got that, then you'll click on the soil map tab. And I always find it, so if you want to go to the next slide, I kind of walk through this. Because you can, if you know your land well, or if it's new land, how much information this actually can provide you. So I'll go out and haven't maybe referenced this in a while, and I'll notice during different conditions or dry spells that, oh, look, that area of the field is doing, shows more signs of drought, and it is uncanny how accurate it can be. So definitely encourage people to look at this. The other big component from this for grazing plan writing is using that soil type to identify your forage suitability group. So that'll be the next slide. And that basically kind of will demonstrate, based on soil type, kind of the innate kind of yield potential, stocking rate of your operation. So if anyone's buying new land, it's definitely worthwhile to look in your soil, look at this forage suitability group, maybe before purchasing, because the variation in stocking rate can be half as much. So if you're on sandy or wet ground, you will, be able to have half as many numbers as someone that's going to be in higher quality soil. So it's just definitely something I think people should be aware of, that if you're 20 acres isn't going to be the same 20 acres everywhere in the state. So to find that forage suitability group, you click the soil reports tab, and then it'll give the numbers. Oh, and you'll get a number that's like a G. It's the number before, if you do the forage suitability reports, there'll be a number before a WI, and that's what correlates to this group. And if anyone wants me to do this for them, feel free to reach out. But this kind of all divides all the soils in the state into those different groups. So that's definitely kind of, with planning land, important. The other one I feel like is really important when I work with the new producers is this stocking rate worksheet. And this is, you can Google 528 prescribed grazing worksheet and kind of work through it on your own. You can do it either forward or backwards, but it's, I guess, kind of hard to. So the two components are going to be, forage demand, how much forage you need to feed your herd. So this is kind of, if you can use like 1,000-pound animal, they'll do, and 4% of that body weight is what you can kind of average that they'll consume a day. So that'd be 40 pounds. I wonder sometimes if it's the same for people, but it's 2.5% for intake. And then they have another kind of, they account some for waste, trample too. But I've thought about, I think I've done the math a little bit, and it seems actually pretty close that maybe that's kind of a standard. And then you go down, so that shows how much your total forage demand is. And I can bring it up on my computer here to see a little better. And then you go through, based on the soil type, is going to be your estimated yield. And that's per rotation, per acre per rotation, based on 5 rotations in the year. And then on the backside, it'll get to how many total acres you need. So that's the next page. I've also done it backwards, where I start with, if I'm going on to a new farm and I know they've got 30 acres available for grazing, you can also do that math backwards to see what their maximum stocking rate would be. So again, I can get you this worksheet, but then it also shows you that for this operation, she's got 77 acres. She had, I'm trying to remember how many cows she had. 60, 85. But anyway, when you do, I think it was 85. So then based on moving them every day, so they required that 2,800 pounds per day. Based on her soil type, she had 1,400 pounds per acre. And then and then based on 1 a day moves, I think we end up rounding it to that 2 to 2.2 acres per day. So then that's good to know too, when you're doing your fence layout and design, you want those paddocks to be roughly square. So this is kind of what goes into the grazing plan writer thought when we're doing our fence designs and figuring out some of those kind of components. The other big thing that we're looking for as plan writers is these critical and sensitive areas. So spots where there's intermittent streams, proximity to wells and water. What else is on there? And a lot of the considerations with this is, some of those areas may still be able to be grazed, but maybe not in the winter, maybe only during certain conditions, and should just be recognized. So again, on your operation, just keeping that in mind that, you're not going to want to winter your animals where there's a marsh, where there's the worry is that having that manure getting into the surface or drinking water. There can also be concerns with compaction and a few other things. So then once you kind of get all of those nuts and bolts pieces together, I love doing the farm design, the fence design. Some of them can definitely be more challenging than others. But what you're thinking of, on my operation, I've got lanes. It's just me. I want to be able to move my cows from one field to another field with just opening gates without having to run a bunch of temporary fence. If I need to treat an animal or if I'm shipping, I definitely set my farm up and encourage people to think about that animal flow. And I've made mistakes, and I have put gates in wrong spots, and but also just kind of, if you're working with someone, they're going to probably give you a plan, but also encourage people to keep thinking through that plan. That, I changed my fence layout the day the fence guys got here. NRCS is pretty flexible. They can't do, more fencing than you have written in the plan, but usually if it's, make sure you work well with your local office if you're working with NRCS, and don't start anything until you've been approved. But some of these layouts and designs, and that idea that you don't want your daily paddocks to be as square as possible. I don't like having really long runs with temp fence because that's a lot of posts and a lot more time. So there's definitely, I think 300 feet's kind of that minimum or maximum between your permanent interior and permanent perimeter. And then we do water line design. We put in a seeding plan, what areas are good for overwintering. So within that plan, there's a lot of considerations made. These are just a few of them. Then who writes plans? I think I kind of had mentioned NRCS is a good first contact. The RC&Ds write a lot of plans. So in the eastern part of the state, there's Glacierland RC&D. Central, we've got Golden Sands. And then in the northwest, it is River Country. So they've got not only a lot of capacity for writing plans, a lot of good technical assistance in addition to NRCS. You want to go ahead of the slide. And then, like I said, then there's going to be the technical service providers, which your NRCS can give you a list, or I think you can find it on the NRCS website. Okay. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't, when it comes to grazing resources, give a shout out to GrassWorks. I've gone to the GrassWorks Conference since I was little, as I mentioned. They've got a calendar of events for pasture walks. There's a lot of great partner groups too that are doing a lot of awesome work between nonprofits. I think Michael Fields is doing some pasture walks and WiWiC group, but that's a good resource, kind of where everything's housed. GrassWorks has a Ask a Grazer Facebook group, which is pretty much just Wisconsin and Midwest folks, and a lot of our grazing specialists throughout the states. They've got grazing schools, and then the GrassWorks conference is in January, and that's awesome to go to. So yeah, I've worked with a lot of awesome farmers. Oh, the why to have a grazing plan. Adam Abel, our state grazing specialist, said he'd get me the supporting data, but just the long-term success. So even if you don't work through NRCS and their cost sharing, you can hire someone like me as a TSP to put together the same grazing plan. And so he has some data to support that people that have had a grazing plan going into starting their grazing operation have higher quality pastures and more long-term success. Working with someone could save you a lot of money in the end with, poor fence design, poor quality stuff, not knowing the right people to connect with for, your supplies that you need, just being able to learn from experience, and then having those relationships. That's what I was going to say. It's fun to be able to be places and have people like Carrie say, oh yeah, Rachel did my grazing plan. And I reiterate, the only thing you can plan on is things not going according to plan. So how'd it go, Carrie?
Yeah, that's probably a good statement for every day, but also for grazing.
Yeah, and thank you, Rachel, for giving us an overview of kind of all the components of a plan and some things to be considering. I'd love to hear from Carrie. As you mentioned, Rachel and Carrie met a few years ago when she wrote Carrie's grazing plan. Carrie owns Mayhill Farm outside of Campbellsport in Lamira, Wisconsin. She's a rock star at direct marketing and multi-species farmer, and she's also a mom. Lots of great experience to share, and she'll be talking about her. Oh, somebody else has something to say. She will be talking through her grazing plan here and giving us some tips on like how it works from plan to practical implementation. Thank you, Carrie.
Great. Thanks for the nice introduction and good job, Rachel. I think I might just reiterate some things Rachel said already, but she can chime in too. So back in, well, I'm pulling up my images here. Back in 2020, we started the process with NRCS where we were looking at converting our farm to pasture. So we purchased the farm in 2018. It was a dairy farm and had cropland. So we started the whole conversation with NRCS in like March, April of 2020, which was great because we were all home, nothing else to do. So we had Rachel come out and take a look at things. So NRCS connected us with Rachel to write the grazing plan. And then we started that process. So I just looked at, I'm going to share my screen here. I looked at our grazing plan and it was written in June of 2020. We got our fence put in July, like around 4th of July, 2021. So, if you're thinking about working with NRCS, that's kind of the process. So we had to submit it and then we're approved and then we could put our fence in. We had Oak Haven do our fence, which I told them once it was installed that I think they saved our marriage. But we also have really good fencing, which is important. So we have about 20 acres, just under 20 acres. We have, according to the plan, 15.7 acres in pasture. So just a couple images I'll talk through as I'm talking about our grazing plan and how that's worked and the process. But this is an old photo of our farm, so way before we were even around. But just to give you an idea, these are, and this is why you want a grazing specialist to come out to your farm and help you with this, the report that goes into NRCS, because look at these pictures. Doesn't it look horrible? It was perfect. It's like, oh, look at this. This is not good. They need some help here. So this was in spring of 2020. Rachel had these pictures in the grazing plan, and it doesn't look good. And it doesn't look like that today, so thankfully. But that's what we were working with. So we have a couple different areas. So our house is kind of in the middle, and then our land goes all the way around. This picture is shortly after the fence went in, but before we were doing rotational grazing. So we had started with some Holstein cattle. You can see them there on the screen. And on that side, so the right side of your screen, I guess, that was a pasture. So we had kind of started them out there, and we were using that for a bit. So just to give you an example of what things did look like, that's kind of the view of our farm. So everything wraps around the house. So in the plan, we talked a lot about how are we going to move cattle, and so I have an interior design background. My husband has the agriculture background, so I'm good at looking at plans. Not so great back then with moving cattle. So we had to really talk through it, and Rachel was great with discussing those things, like what is your plan? How do you think this is going to work? And then she could take her experience and say, okay, well, if you get to this corner of the property, then how are we moving the cattle back around over here? So we had to look at those different paddocks, where the gates are placed, where they're coming for water in winter, and things like that. So this is the fencing plan. So we ended up going with 4-strand on the exterior that you can see here in this picture, and then 3-strand on the interior. And so the red is the exterior on the plan. The red is the exterior fencing, and then the orange is the interior, and then the yellow are all the gates. So all the different places, except we do not have a gate in that one spot. Interesting, but there we go. See, it doesn't go according to plan. But it's only one. Everything else is where it is. So that was where we started, or this is not where we started. This is where we finished. We did a couple iterations with Rachel first, and then said, yep, this looks good. And then our fence got put in. So this is right when it was fresh and new. Most places it still looks like this. There's a couple places where our neighboring farmer may have taken out a couple posts, but we'll get those fixed eventually. But one thing, just food for thought. So thinking of like your daily life and things like that, this piece of fence is the closest to our house. And we have young kids, and just thinking about people coming to the farm, kids always run right up to the fence. So we have this shut off, the picture on the right-hand side. So we can shut off just this front piece of fence, so that when we have events on the farm, or we have a lot of people over, we can turn that off so nobody runs up and shocks themselves. And the cattle, they don't know it's off. They don't care. So then this is our paddock plan. So all the white lines show how we will graze it. And typically this is true. So I pulled up an aerial shot off of Google, or this might be my iPhone maps, but you can see, if you look on the picture on the right, you can see those lines that correlate with the white lines in the map on the left. So if that kind of makes sense. So the cattle are kind of in that middle paddock. And then maybe I don't know if my mouse shows up. The cattle are right here. And you can see all the little lines. So you can see where we've made the paddocks for them, and they've grazed each section. We do, so this year being a little different, we only have 7 cow-calf pairs on our pasture this summer. We have, I think, around 100 cattle total, but they're on a couple other pastures this summer because we've obviously overstocked and needed to go elsewhere with our cattle. So now we're understocked for the summer. But we typically would do daily moves, and we would work our way, just depending on what the forage in each area. We try to work our way just up and down each paddock, but sometimes we need to skip an area. We have really heavy alfalfa up close to the house. And so that we have to be really careful to only graze that at certain times. So we might skip that and come back to it. So we don't have lanes. I know Rachel mentioned she has lanes. We don't have lanes. So, but we're not moving cattle that far normally. And if we need to, there's two of us to move them, or we recruit one of the kids to help too. So this is just a little close up of that Google Maps or iPhone Maps shot from the previous screen. And then you can see the lines a little better where we graze each paddock. The middle picture, so this is interesting, so I can kind of tell when this picture was taken. So where it says the blue dot, hang on, let me go back. The blue dot that says home, then there's these weird lines. So these are my chicken tractors. So in summer, we do at least 2, if not 3, batches of meat chickens out on our pasture. And we kind of work it around wherever we have the cattle. Sometimes the cattle graze right up to close by the chicken tractors. But we try to follow the chicken tractors after the cattle. But you can see, just like you can see how the cattle graze it, you can see how the chickens have, grazed those certain parts. And then this other weird line is just where I drove the mule to fill up my water and back. So just interesting to see that. And then the close up on the right-hand side, that's every winter we use, which we probably should change it, we use that side for our sacrifice pasture. So you can see where all the hay bale rings were set. One of the places our cattle are this summer, he's started unrolling his bales. So I'm thinking that might be in our future because we're going to need a lot of bales out every day this winter when we bring all of our cattle home. So we might start unrolling them, which I think will help in the long run. And then this image is what Rachel's going to yell at me for. But this, I think, was taken this past winter. I'm 100% positive it was taken this past winter. So we had like I said, we're overstocked. So we had 2 separate groups on each side of the barns. So you can see that those areas really were tore up a bit this winter. Then what we do in spring is we typically seed with peas and oats. And then every summer except this summer, we've done sorghum sudan. So the picture on the right here is a calf in the sorghum sudan from, I think, last summer. And that stuff grows. It loves the heat, grows so fast. And then the calves you can't even see the calves because the sorghum sudan is so tall. And then just our sacrifice pasture on the left-hand side with the cattle grazing. Then the other nice thing about a pasture plan is you get your water lines mapped out too. So this is our water line plan. We did add more. So the water line we did ourselves. We didn't contract that out. We contracted the fencing out. But then NRCS has cost share for the water line. We did a little more. So the water line is shown in blue here, and we did a little more. We came out into the middle paddocks on the left a little bit further too. But then we just use stock tanks, and then the bottom right, you can see when we were turning our water lines on in spring, my husband and daughter decided they needed a drink of water because they got thirsty. So there's just little keys that plug into them. It comes in real handy. I even plug in my water for my chickens in the pasture, so that is really convenient. However, if we have to blow out the lines in fall, and then we have water up by 2 of the buildings that the cattle can come up to in the wintertime. Here's just a couple pictures. We don't normally take pictures like this in the pasture. We did branding photo shoot this summer. We don't normally hang out in our nice clothes and move cattle, but just to see some of, if you're not familiar, which I'm guessing most people are, we use the polyline reels and then the pigtails to put up our lines for our paddocks, and then just the gates in the different areas. And these are our cattle this year, so our 7 cows and calves. And this bottom here is pretty grassy, where up top has more of the alfalfa. And this was all pretty established when we put in our fencing, so we haven't done a whole lot of interseeding in these areas. I'm trying to think what else. So I did look on our plan, and I think 25 animals was what was on our stocking capacity. So obviously we're above and beyond that, and trying to work out as our business grows, figure out where that needs to be. We've struggled with trying to purchase more land around us. So the custom grazing is where we're at for now. Otherwise, I don't think I have any notes, but if there are any questions, or Rachel, you have any additions to that, feel free.
No, but there's a lot of the design components where I'm like, why did I do it that way? I would have totally done it different.
Let's do
5
a
more years
review.
of experience too. Yeah, I don't know if you guys want to go through some of the questions that came up. I saw a couple of them pop up, but
Yeah, and before we do, just thank you both for sharing your experience with us. This is really great. We had a couple of questions about getting plans and what support looks like. Could you talk a little bit about what the costs are of getting a grazing plan, and how that varies depending on who you might work with?
typically there are people that do it as private consultants essentially. NRCS has cost sharing through a few different avenues for the plans. We're working on getting that funded again. That was an agreement that we had lost. So last I heard that there is hopefully going to be a pool of money available for NRCS cost shared plans. There is the option too, as a NRCS equipped practice, to have a plan written and cost shared, but you have to apply for that first, and then the next, then you could get your plan written, and then the next application cycle is when you could apply for the actual practices. The plans run about $2,000, give or take, on average. So if you want to just forego and just hire someone to do it, I think that's kind of about the ballpark of what they'd cost. I know there is a wait list and a backlog through NRCS right now as well. So our state grazing specialist has a list of plans that need to be written too. So there's kind of ongoing dialogue, and it depends on what the capacity is in your local office. My other advice always is there's a lot of newer staff or in offices, and so sometimes you may get a different answer than maybe someone else in another part of the state. That these practices are all statewide standards, and sometimes it's just that people didn't know that they could cost share for. I heard at one point that they were saying, perimeter fence, and there's a lot of different rules and restrictions anytime you're working with NRCS. But all in all, I love working with NRCS and the different counties. And so if you ever have any questions, or maybe didn't get the information you needed or wanted, feel free to reach out to myself, or talk to someone in a different part of the state or different county.
We also had somebody ask, does NRCS work with hobby farms? And then kind of in addition to that, what kind of ongoing support or monitoring does the NRCS have around these plans? So maybe touching on some of, the technical assistance versus the actual monitoring element, if you were to work
So
with.
then for the hobby farm question, they don't necessarily have a minimum number of acres. I think I wrote a plan for someone that was like 1.1 acres, was maybe my smallest. There are restrictions to livestock classes. So basically only ruminants animals. So sheep, goats, and cows. are, qualify under NRCS equip funding, whereas chickens, pigs, and horses would not. But there's other practices that, they may be able to work with you on your operation too. So always worthwhile having them come out. And then for monitoring, if you're doing the grazing contract with them, you get a per acre payment for, I think it's 3 or 5 years. It's changed a couple times, but in that you have to submit grazing records, and you sign with your contract that you will not overgraze, you will not, commit these grazing sins. But generally, and it definitely depends on the resources within your county. But I've always had really good experience, and they've always provided me good technical support. I'll let Carrie chime in on what her experience has been.
Yeah, I think they're really good at work, to work with, and we do have to put together our what we did for the year. So at the end of the year, when my husband's like, "Okay, well, what day were the cattle over here?" And I'm like, "And you're asking me this on New Year's Eve because why?" But so then we look through our pictures. No, so we're working on our processes and procedures, but we do have to say where the cattle grazed all through the year, where they were, what date, and then we submit that, and then yeah, we have to sign off paperwork and things, and they are very, I think they're used to working with farmers who are uh, just juggling all sorts of things all the time because they're very good at saying, hey, we need this paperwork signed yesterday. Can you just drop that off in the next couple days? So they give you a lot of grace, but don't tell them I told you that. So get it in on time, maybe.
We had someone ask, is a grazing plan recommended if you have only a certain number of animals, or like if you only have a handful, do you need one, or should you get one? What are your
I
thoughts
think
on that?
it depends on your goals and your operation. With that paddock size and having that designed out, I mean, you can definitely get best utilization. I think, and I've talked to someone in the southern part of the state that and this would have been similar to that 1.1 acre one where those daily paddock sizes are in square feet and they're not very big, but the one person I talked to was saying he goes out and measures it and is very particular about it and appreciates it. So kind of depends on what you have and your goals for your operation, I think.
Carrie,
Yeah.
maybe you could just speak to like what has been most valuable to you with having a plan and some new ideas maybe that came to you through the planning process.
Yeah, I think especially for me not having an agriculture background, and granted, my husband does a lot of um, handles a lot of the grazing thing. When he goes out to move the cattle, they know they're moving because he's out there. When I come out, they're like, "Are you going to move me? Are you not? I don't know." But they know his voice, and I know Rachel can call her cows, and he can pretty much call hers, so they know who's there to feed them, right? But I think just having another set of eyes on it and to say, okay, here's what you could do. And but the best part I think was Rachel was never like, this is how you should do it. She would give us our options, and then she highly encouraged us to go to a lot of pasture walks. So we spent that summer of 2020 going to like every pasture walk in the state of Wisconsin. And we all do what we do. We're farmers because we can do what we want to do because it's our land, it's our animals. We can do it the way we want. So that's the great part about it. But having that expertise and then seeing what other people do is just helpful to say, like, oh, okay, well, then on our land, we could do this or we could do that. Or, oh, we didn't think about this. What if we tried this? So just having that resource is great to be able to say like, hey, what do you think about this? Have you ever seen this, or has anybody ever done that? Is super helpful because sometimes we can just sit here and go, well, this is the way we've always done it, and we can't think outside of the box, but having somebody else look at it can. So I think that's been very valuable. And then like we'll look at it, you know, every once in a while, pull it up and be like, oh, okay, yeah, this is, you know, this is what our stacking density is supposed to be, or this is what we were going to do here for planting. So just having that to kind of check and balance to look back at is helpful. But yeah, I think just having the resource.
I mean, that other resources too, included in my grazing plans, and now GrassWorks has got the grazing guide, but you know, there's a section with bloat, there's a section with soil testing. So it's not just you know, what I showed there, the components of the grazing plan, is most people, or at least I always include this whole package of supplemental information. That's similar to now GrassWorks has their grazing guide, but a lot of those kind of other components to having livestock.
Yeah, great. Are there any other questions that anybody would like to ask? Feel free to come off of mute if you just want to ask any direct questions. Otherwise, we can thank our speakers for sharing with us their experience, and I really hope, wish you the best with the rest of your grazing season. And if any of you have questions, Christine did put the contact information for Carrie and Rachel in the chat, so feel free to reach out directly. I just wanted to highlight again, we do have a couple events coming up. We have the pollinator event tomorrow in Barneveld, if that is in your area. We also have on September 18th, we're back here online at Zoom over lunch for a talk on agroforestry and perennial crops. And then on September 30th, would love to have you come out to our farm and see our prairies and also see some of our cattle grazing. And in the meantime, feel free to join our blog and our listserv so that you can stay up to date on our events, but also keep this conversation going with other women in the conservation community online. The listserv is fantastic for that. And Christine will put those contact things in the chat. So we hope to see you back here next month. Thank you so much. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.